Hello, dear. Welcome back to Timeless Wisdom. If you're a senior eager to streamline your living space and eliminate clutter, you've come to the right spot. Today, we'll explore 15 common items you might not realize are better off outside your home to create a tidier, more serene environment. Believe me, a few of these could be quite unexpected. Over time, we tend to accumulate items under the guise of necessity, but these often just occupy valuable space and contribute to our stress. If you're prepared to rid yourself of unnecessary clutter and transform your home into a sanctuary of tranquility and comfort, stay tuned. Before we dive in, please remember to like this video, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom, and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our tips for simplifying your life. Let's begin. Our first topic: excess paperwork and old documents. Truthfully, paper clutter can stealthily conquer your space before you even notice. It begins with a few unattended bills on your countertop, some manuals for appliances long stopped using, and suddenly you find yourself with drawers stuffed with unread mail, outdated receipts, expired warranties, and forgotten documents from decades past. Consider Linda, a vibrant 70-something who kept every bill, tax document, and health record just in case. As time passed, her workspace transformed into a daunting pile of paperwork, rendering it a Herculean task to locate anything urgently needed. There came a point when just glancing at my desk overwhelmed me, she shared. Determined, she dedicated a weekend to sort through her papers and discovered she had held onto electricity bills dating back to the early 2000s. Utterly superfluous. Here's why you should manage paper clutter before it takes over. Firstly, it breeds unnecessary stress. Cluttered environments lead to a cluttered mindset, making every sighting of those piles feel like a lingering, unfinished chore. Moreover, vital documents can easily get lost. Ever been in a mad rush to find a birth certificate or insurance policy? When papers are disorganized, locating critical documents during emergencies becomes a dire struggle. Not to forget, old papers are not just an eyesore, they gather dust and can trigger allergies. Moving forward, whenever possible, opt for digital versions of important documents, securely saving them on a USB stick or in cloud storage. For physical copies, maintain a single organized file with only your most crucial documents like your passport, birth certificate, will, and medical records. As for the rest, it's best to shred and recycle any outdated or irrelevant paperwork. After purging her old papers, Linda exclaimed, "I felt as if I could finally breathe again. It was like clearing mental clutter, not merely physical." Number 2. Duplicate kitchenware. Kitchens are a prime spot for unnecessary clutter. You might think it's just a couple of extra spatulas. What's the harm? But before you know it, you're rummaging through overstuffed drawers, moving around extra coffee mugs and pans just to find what you actually use. Take George and Mary, a couple who had lived in their home for 40 years. When they decided to declutter, they discovered they owned 6 corkscrews, 4 toasters, 2 of which didn't even work, and a drawer full of mismatched plastic containers with no lids. "It was ridiculous," Mary laughed. "We don't even drink wine that much." Keeping duplicate kitchen items could be a mistake because it makes cooking more frustrating than it needs to be. Instead of easily grabbing the spatula you need, you end up sifting through a pile of unnecessary utensils. Plus, all that extra clutter takes up valuable storage space. Overstuffed cabinets make it harder to find what you actually use, and let's be honest, you'll probably reach for the same favorite items anyway. Do you really use all those mugs, pots, and baking sheets regularly? Keep only one of each essential tool, or 2 if you genuinely need a backup. Donate the extras. Someone else can actually put them to good use. Adopt a minimalist mindset. If you haven't used it in the last 6 months, chances are you don't need it. Mary summed it up best. Now that we have only what we actually use, cooking feels so much easier. I don't miss any of that extra junk. Number 3. Unworn clothing and accessories. Your closet should be a place of ease, not stress. But if you open the door and feel overwhelmed by clothes you haven't worn in years, it's time to make a change. Diane, a retired teacher, had a walk-in closet packed with outfits from every stage of her life. She had business suits from when she used to teach, dresses from events she attended over a decade ago, and sweaters she swore she might wear one day. But in reality, she wore the same comfortable staples on repeat. She realized that half of her clothes didn't even fit anymore. Instead of bringing back good memories, they just made her feel guilty. Many pieces were also outdated or simply not her style anymore. That floral blouse she adored in 1995? Not so much now. And the clutter made getting dressed a chore, sifting through dozens of items just to find a comfortable pair of pants. Totally exhausting. You can try the 1-year rule. If you haven't worn it in a year, donate it. Keep only what fits and makes you feel good and limit yourself to a reasonable number of each clothing type. Do you really need 20 pairs of shoes? After clearing out 6 bags of unworn clothes, Diane said, "I can actually see what I have now. Getting dressed in the morning feels effortless instead of frustrating." Expired medications and beauty products. Many of us have a habit of keeping old medications and beauty products just in case. But here's the reality. Expired products are ineffective at best and potentially dangerous at worst. Tom, a retired pharmacist, used to see this issue all the time. "People think medication lasts forever, but that's not true," he said. "I once had a patient who was taking painkillers from 10 years ago. They weren't working anymore, and they were actually making her feel sick." Similarly, beauty products can go bad. Lotions, makeup, and even shampoo have expiration dates. And using old products can lead to skin irritation and infections. You should clear them out because expired meds lose effectiveness and can even be harmful. Old beauty products collect bacteria, which can cause breakouts, rashes, or eye infections. They also take up unnecessary space. Why keep something you'll never use anyway? Safely dispose of expired medications. Many pharmacies have take-back programs for old prescriptions. Check expiration dates on beauty products, and if something smells odd or has changed texture, toss it. Most importantly, you should only keep what you actively use. Once Tom cleaned out his medicine cabinet, he said, "Now I know exactly where my essentials are, and I never have to second-guess whether something is still good." Unused or broken electronics. Do you have an old flip phone from 2005 sitting in a drawer somewhere? Maybe a DVD player that hasn't been touched in years, a drawer full of tangled chargers, or a stack of outdated laptops you swear you'll get around to fixing? If so, you're not alone. Susan, a retired nurse, had an entire cabinet in her living room filled with old electronics. "I had 3 dead cell phones, 2 old laptops, and a VCR from the 90s. I don't even own a single VHS tape anymore," she laughed. But every time she opened that cabinet, she felt a pang of stress. It was like a reminder that I had unfinished business. Why keep things that no longer serve you? First of all, they take up valuable space. That junk drawer full of random chargers, headphones, and mystery cords. It doesn't have to be a black hole of clutter. It could be empty. Let's be real. Broken items don't magically fix themselves. If something has been sitting there for years, the chances of you repairing it now are slim. And even if you did, old technology becomes obsolete fast. That outdated laptop, even if you got it working, would it run modern programs? Probably not. Donate working electronics to a local charity or school. Recycle non-functional ones. Many stores like Best Buy offer proper disposal programs. And most importantly, keep only the devices you actually use. Susan finally tackled her electronics cabinet, keeping just one backup phone and recycling everything else. Now, every time I open that cabinet, I feel relief instead of stress, she said. Excessive decor and knickknacks. We all love sentimental keepsakes, photos of loved ones, souvenirs from vacations, gifts from friends. But when every surface in your home is covered in trinkets, it can feel overwhelming rather than comforting. Ed and Carol, a retired couple, had shelves full of figurines, decorative plates, and framed pictures. It got to the point where I had to move things just to dust, Carol admitted, and I hate dusting. The clutter made their living space feel smaller, and the effort to maintain everything was exhausting. Here's why keeping too many decorative items is a problem. First off, they collect dust and make cleaning more difficult. The more you have, the more you have to clean. Second, they create visual clutter. Instead of highlighting a few special pieces, everything blends together, making it harder for anything to stand out. And last but not least, they can make your home feel smaller. A room filled with stuff doesn't feel cozy, it feels crowded. Keep only the most meaningful or beautiful items. Follow the highlight rule. If everything is a centerpiece, nothing stands out. Also, consider digitizing sentimental items like old letters or children's artwork, instead of keeping piles of them. After donating several boxes of knickknacks and keeping just a few favourites, Carol said, "Now my home feels peaceful instead of cluttered." If you love to read, you might have stacks of magazines and newspapers that you meant to go through, but never did. What starts as a small pile quickly turns into an overwhelming mountain. Take Jim, for example. He subscribed to National Geographic and Reader's Digest for decades. "I kept telling myself I'd read them someday," he said, but someday never came. Before he knew it, he had an entire corner of his home dedicated to old magazines. Here's why holding on to them could be a mistake. First, you probably won't read them. If they've been sitting untouched for years, it's a sign it's time to let go. Second, they take up valuable space for no reason. A magazine from 2015 isn't doing you any good in 2025. And third, they can be a fire hazard. Large piles of paper can be dangerous in case of an emergency. Keep only a few special issues, like one from a major life event. Switch to digital subscriptions to reduce paper clutter. Also, consider recycling or donating old magazines to schools or libraries. Jim finally let go of his massive magazine collection, keeping just 3 favourite issues. "Now I don't feel guilty every time I see that corner of the room," he said. "It feels like a fresh start." We all have good intentions. Maybe you started knitting a sweater, planned to build a birdhouse, or had grand dreams of learning watercolour painting. But if you've been staring at the same unfinished project for months, or even years, it's not inspiring. It's draining. Lisa, a retired school teacher, had a craft room filled with half-done projects. "I had knitting supplies from when I thought I wanted to knit, and canvases from when I thought I wanted to paint. But instead of feeling creative, she felt guilty. Every time I walked into that room, I felt like a failure." Here's why you should let go of unfinished projects. First, they create mental clutter. Instead of bringing joy, they serve as constant reminders of what you haven't done. They also take up valuable space. Rooms filled with maybes aren't truly serving you. And let's be honest, if you really love doing it, you would have finished it by now. Ask yourself, do I actually want to finish this? If the answer is no, let it go. Donate the materials to someone who will use them, and keep only the hobbies you actively enjoy. Lisa finally cleared out her craft room, keeping just one creative hobby she loved. "It's amazing how freeing it feels to let go of things that were just weighing me down," she said. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you had to squeeze past chairs, tables, or cabinets just to move around? That's what happens when you have too much furniture or pieces that are too big for the space. Barbara, a retired school librarian, had a beautiful but massive china cabinet in her dining room. It was passed down from her grandmother, and while it was sentimental, it also dominated the entire space. I felt like I was living in a furniture store instead of my own home, she admitted. I kept bumping into it, and it made the whole room feel cramped. Here's why bulky or unused furniture should go. 1. It limits mobility. As we age, having clear, open spaces is crucial for safety. Fewer obstacles mean less risk of tripping or bumping into sharp corners. It also makes rooms feel smaller and more cluttered. Even a spacious room can feel cramped if it's overloaded with furniture. And let's be honest, you probably don't use all of it. That extra side table or decorative bench might look nice. But is it actually serving a purpose? Remove any furniture that you don't actively use or that makes moving around difficult. Consider swapping bulky pieces for more space-efficient alternatives. And if something holds sentimental value, take a photo before donating it or pass it on to a family member who will actually use it. After letting go of the oversized china cabinet, Barbara felt immediate relief. Now my dining room feels open and I can actually enjoy being in it. Excess bedding and towels. Linen closets have a way of accumulating way too much stuff. Extra sheets, piles of towels, blankets you forgot you even owned. But how many do you actually use? Take Henry, for example. He lived alone, but had 14 sets of sheets and 20 bath towels. I kept thinking, what if I need them? But the truth is, I only ever use my favourites, he admitted. His linen closet was so packed that it was hard to even close the door. Keeping too many linens can be a mistake, because realistically, you don't need that many. 2 or 3 sets of sheets and a few towels per person are plenty. Plus, they take up valuable storage space. An overstuffed linen closet makes it harder to find what you actually need. And let's not forget, old linens can become musty, and unused towels lose their softness over time. Extra bedding just sits there, collecting dust. Try to keep just a couple of sets of sheets and a few towels per person. Donate any extras to homeless shelters or pet rescues. They always need blankets and towels. And don't forget to rotate out old linens. If it's faded, torn or scratchy, it's time to let it go. After downsizing his linen closet, Henry said, "It's so nice to open the door and see exactly what I need without fighting through piles of old towels." Rarely used kitchen appliances. How many of us have fallen into the trap of buying a fancy kitchen gadget, using it once, and then letting it collect dust for years? That's how Margaret, a retired baker, felt about her bread maker. "I thought I'd use it all the time," she laughed, "but after a couple of loaves, it just became a decoration on my counter." Here's why rarely used kitchen appliances need to go. First, they take up valuable counter and cabinet space. If you don't use something regularly, it's just in the way. They also create a cluttered kitchen. A clean, open space is far more inviting than one packed with unused gadgets. And they make cooking feel overwhelming. If you have to dig through a pile of machines just to find a simple pot or pan, it's time to rethink what you keep. Try to keep only the appliances you use regularly. If you haven't touched it in a year, chances are you won't miss it. Donate or sell gadgets that are just taking up space. Also, consider multi-purpose appliances. A high-quality blender can replace a smoothie maker, food processor, and more, saving you both space and hassle. Margaret finally donated her bread maker and a few other unused kitchen gadgets. Now cooking feels simple again. I can actually see my counters. Old holiday decorations. Holiday decorations bring joy, but when you have too many, they become more of a burden than a delight. Tom and Elaine loved Christmas, but after decades of collecting decorations, their attic was overflowing with boxes of old lights, ornaments, and figurines. "We had things from when our kids were little, but now they have their own families and their own decorations," Elaine said. "And every year, we only used a fraction of what we owned. You see, keeping too many decorations can be a mistake because they take up valuable storage space all year for something you only use a few weeks. Plus, many get damaged over time. Old lights stop working, ornaments break, and artificial wreaths collect dust. Instead of feeling festive, decorating can start to feel stressful. Sifting through mountains of old decorations just to find the ones you actually want to use can be exhausting. Keep only your favourite, most meaningful decorations. Pass down sentimental items to family members who will truly appreciate them. And instead of letting the rest collect dust, donate them to churches, schools, or thrift stores so others can enjoy them. After donating several boxes of old decorations, Elaine said, "Now setting up for Christmas is a joy instead of a chore. I actually love the decorations I kept." Outdated hobby suppliers. Hobbies bring joy. But what happens when the supplies start to pile up and take over your space? Many of us have had a passion at one point: painting, sewing, woodworking, or crafting. But if it's been years since you've picked it up, chances are those supplies are just sitting there, collecting dust. Take Sharon, for example. She used to love scrapbooking and had an entire closet filled with fancy paper, stickers, and tools. "At one time, I was so into it," she admitted, "but over the years I just stopped. My interest changed, but the supplies stayed." Every time she opened that closet, she felt guilty, like she should be scrapbooking, even though she had no desire to anymore. Here's why keeping outdated hobby supplies is a mistake. First, they take up valuable space. If you haven't touched something in years, it's probably just in the way. They also create guilt instead of joy. Every time you see them, you feel like you should be using them, even though you have no real desire to. And let's not forget that supplies degrade over time. Paint dries up, fabric fades, and glue loses its stick. By the time you decide to use them, they might not even work. Just be honest with yourself. If you haven't touched it in over a year, it's time to let go. Donate supplies to schools, libraries, or community centres where they'll actually be used and appreciated. If you still enjoy the hobby but don't do it as often, keep only the essentials. Sharon finally donated her scrapbooking supplies to a local after-school program. "Now, I don't feel that nagging guilt anymore, and I've gained back a whole closet," she said. Redundant tools and hardware. Being well prepared is excellent, but is there a need for 5 hammers, 3 tape measures, and a dozen screwdrivers? Take Frank, a retired mechanic who had a workbench brimming with tools. "I ended up with duplicates of everything," he chuckled. "Whenever I couldn't find a tool, I'd buy another, and soon I had 5 of the same wrench." When he finally organised his workshop, he found many tools were rusted, broken, or just unnecessary. Having duplicate tools only leads to clutter and consumes too much space. It complicates staying organised as storage areas and toolboxes become chaotic. Plus, it turns finding the right tool into a tiresome search through excessive amounts. Realistically, we tend to rely on a few favourite tools, while the rest collect dust. Streamline your collection to include only one high-quality version of each essential tool. Consider donating any extras to community programs, trade schools, or friends who could put them to use. Most importantly, keep your tools well organised to avoid purchasing unnecessary duplicates. Frank's experience says it all. "After I organised my tools, I knew exactly where everything was, making small projects much simpler." The just-in-case trap. Many of us keep items we haven't used in years, thinking they might come in handy one day. Martha, a retired teacher, faced this issue with an attic full of such items: old clothing, extra dishes, and unused electronic cords. "I always thought I might need these someday, but that day never arrived," she confessed. Storing items just in case is often misguided, as that day rarely comes. These items not only take up valuable space, but also create mental clutter. You end up maintaining and sorting through things you never use. it's important to critically evaluate whether to keep these items. Ask yourself, if I disposed of this and needed it later, could I replace it or find an alternative? If you haven't used something in 6 months to a year, it's probably time to let it go. Martha's experience was liberating. Clearing out those just-in-case items was a huge relief. I don't miss anything I got rid of. All right, everyone, we've looked at 15 types of clutter that could be crowding your home. I hope this inspires you to reassess your belongings and identify what genuinely adds value to your life. Decluttering isn't merely about removing items, it's about crafting a space that brings you peace, happiness, and freedom. Now, I'm eager to hear from you. What will you declutter first? Drop a comment below and join the conversation. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom, and share it with someone who might benefit from a little decluttering motivation. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you in the next video. Stay happy. Stay clutter-free.